Good afternoon. I'd like to welcome you all to the 5th Bioindustry Seminar with Embassies. My name is Youngmi Ji, Institute Pasteur Korea. I'm the CEO of IPK. It is my great privilege to moderate today's event. And first of all, I want to thank Korea Biotechnology Industry Organization for organizing today's event. Today, we will have presentations from 4 countries: United States, Malaysia, Israel, and China. So I hope all participants offline, online, have a very productive and a valuable time. So let me first introduce the first speaker from United States, Mr. Gregory Briscoe. He is the Minister Counselor, Commercial Affairs, U.S. Embassy. So please welcome Mr. Briscoe.
Thank you, Dr. G, for that introduction, and thank you for moderating this panel for us today. And also I want to thank Korea Bio for putting together this opportunity for us to talk about what our different countries are doing in terms of investing and bioscience. It's a very important, very important topic and very timely, obviously. Korea Bio is certainly timely, as I noted, during 2020 and now in 2021. We are singularly focused on a healthcare pandemic that has forced us all to see how interconnected we are and how investment and support of R&D in the medical sector is key to allowing us to all reconnect and return to lives that we prefer. It is an honor to present with Director Mohammed Ridwan Zabri of the Malaysian Investment Authority, Development Authority, Yaniv Goldberg, the head of the Economic and Trade Office at the Embassy of Israel, and Third Secretary Binshu Chen from the Embassy of the People's Republic of China. We are all posted here in Seoul, Korea. If we have learned anything over the past 1.5 years, it's that we must all work together, and I hope that today's audience will learn about each of our different markets. So let me tell you about the U.S. market. The U.S. is open to all types of investment. In fact, there are 6 primary reasons we point to as to why investing in the United States makes a good strategic decision for Korean companies and companies from around the world. First, the United States is the largest consumer market. In 2017, U.S. families purchased more than $13.3 trillion in goods and services. That's more than a quarter of the entire world's household consumption. The median household income by country for 2020 puts Luxembourg at the top at $52,000, but the U.S. is listed at almost $44,000. So that's a very large market and a very large consumer market. The second reason is the U.S. is a nexus of innovation. The U.S. registers more international patents than any other country. The U.S. has an innovation culture. It's deeply rooted in collaboration and knowledge sharing. The U.S. market encourages entrepreneurship, risk-taking, and even the risk of failure. And the U.S. attracts more international students than any other country. U.S. university spending on R&D totaled more than $74 billion in 2018. And since 2012, the U.S. universities and colleges have produced more than 50,000 doctoral recipients per year. A good example in the medical device area of this is that in 2017, the U.S. was the largest medical device market in the world, $156 billion, and 40% of global demand. By 2023, that is expected to grow to $208 billion. Of interest and evidence of the innovation ecosystem, more than 80% of medical device companies in the United States consist of fewer than 50 employees. U.S. medical device companies are highly regarded for their innovation and high-tech products. R&D spending represents a high percentage of medical device industry expenditures. In addition, this industry relies on microelectronics, telecommunications, instrumentation, biotechnology, and software development, all sectors that the U.S. has a competitive advantage. This collaboration fuels new advancements and is projected to continue to do so. The third reason is the ease of doing business in the United States. The U.S. is consistently ranked among the best for its overall competitiveness and ease of doing business. We have a strong regulatory environment that is conducive to starting and operating a business. Our culture encourages free enterprise and competitiveness, and we have a stable and predictable legal system. In the U.S., you, the investor, have the freedom to choose where to locate and how to structure your business. While the procedure for registering a company can vary from state to state, it is typically straightforward and fast and inexpensive. We also have soft landing programs that help focus resources, and we can facilitate connections with local universities and trade associations. The fourth reason is we have a very skilled workforce. The U.S. workforce output per hour is more than 30% higher than the OECD member country average. The U.S. has free public K through 12 education. We have a thriving and advanced college and university network. Over 40% of U.S. adults have completed a level of education beyond high school. Fifth, we have abundant natural resources. The U.S. is the third largest nation by geography and is home to a vast and varied landscape with abundant natural resources. The U.S. offers independent, stable, and low-cost energy sources. We have some of the largest supplies of petroleum and natural gas. But that resources also include clean energy, fossil, electric power, hydrogen, and fuel cells, and energy storage. Indeed, the Biden administration will make further investments to grow eco-friendly energy sources. And finally, six, we have ample funding sources. Access to capital is an important reason to choose a country to invest. The U.S. market has a variety of funding sources from banks, investment firms, venture capitalists, and angel investors. Now I'd like to highlight the relationship between the U.S. and Korean companies. As you can see from these slides, Korean companies represent the 14th largest source of FDI into the United States. Now let me talk about the biopharmaceutical and medical equipment market. The United States is the largest market for biopharmaceuticals, accounting for a third of the global market, and it is the world leader in biopharmaceutical biopharmaceutical R&D. Next slide. In 2019, life science companies invested $583 billion in the United States. $511 billion of that was in pharmaceuticals and medical medicines, and $72 billion in medical equipment and supplies. Over the past 10 years, there have been over 1,300 greenfield investment projects in the life sciences industry, with a capital investment of $42.3 billion. And Korea ranks within the top 10 in CapEx. This means that many Korean companies have already realized that investing in the United States makes strategic sense. Here are 3 examples of recent Korean FDI projects. So we have VGXI, which is a facility in Texas, Samsung Biologics in California, and NK Max America in California. Now, even during the time of COVID, we welcome new and innovative companies. Now, companies within the life sciences or biopharma sectors seem to cluster together. Here are the top 5 locations. So Massachusetts, California, Pennsylvania, New York, and North Carolina. So what does this mean? It means that these locations are working hard to develop supportive ecosystems. They don't just welcome healthcare companies, we support them and protect them. We have one of the world's most supportive domestic environments for the development and commercialization of pharmaceuticals with minimal market barriers. Our strengths include an intellectual property system that rewards innovation through patent and data protection, a science-based regulatory system, and the largest scientific research base fostered by academic institutions. I'm not here to tell you that investing in the United States is easy, but I can promise you that investing in the United States will open up opportunities for your company. As an example, in 2018, pharmaceutical exports from the United States totaled $60.1 billion, and $17.2 billion were from majority foreign-owned firms operating in the United States. That's almost a third of total exports in this field. And exports of medical devices and suppliers totaled $35.2 billion, and exports from majority foreign-owned firms was $6.9 billion, which represented about 20% of medical device U.S. exports. So we see that foreign pharmaceutical and medical device companies are increasingly coming to the U.S. and using it as an export platform to other markets in the world. Additionally, we are the world leaders in biopharmaceutical R&D. According to the Pharmaceutical Research and Manufacturers Association, or PhRMA, biopharmaceutical firms spent about $97 billion on R&D in the U.S. from 2017. That's more than any other industry. And majority foreign-owned firms contributed $22.4 billion to R&D in 2018. As you can see from this slide, the UK is the largest country of origin for majority foreign-owned businesses that are taking advantage of exporting and developing R&D in the United States. I'd love to see South Korea's name on this slide in the next year. Investing and cooperating in the United States is not just for large companies. Small and medium-sized companies are welcome and can find opportunities in the U.S. market. In fact, in 2018, our Small Business Administration reported that 99.9% of businesses in the United States are considered small or medium-sized. They are truly a driver of growth and economic development around the world, and particularly in the United States. So now I'd like to explain how we at the U.S. Embassy can help you find the right place in the U.S. through a program called Select USA. This is how we can help. We can provide essential information, we can organize opportunities for networking, and we can help you when needed through our investment ombudsman and advocacy programs. These are the types of actionable information that we can provide. Just as an example, this slide is a shows a tool that is available to anyone who reaches out to us and contacts us. It's a cluster mapping tool, and it can tell you, help you better understand where industry clusters exist in the United States, where you can find other companies like yours in the United States. This is an example of the cluster map that shows where medical device clusters exist in the United States. Now, if you're trying to understand what incentives different states offer, this page this service is a good first step. Now, sometimes you will have questions for different central government offices, and we have a special ombudsman service that can help connect you to the correct agency for your issue, including a representative from the Food and Drug Administration. We also work with service providers, and we can provide you a list of service providers that can help you navigate investment decisions in the United States. Now, I just want to talk about our investment summit. It's a highlight of our effort. It's an annual event, and it's held to bring together foreign investors with different U.S. localities to help them work out how foreign investors can best enter the U.S. market. Now, while the 2020 Select USA Investment Summit was canceled, I can say that the 2019 summit was great, and it was a big success. We had over 3,100 attendees, and we brought a delegation of over 100 South Korean representatives with us to the summit that was led by our former Ambassador Harris. It was a great turnout. Now, this year's summit is going to be a little different from the ones that maybe some of you might have attended or you're familiar with. This year, the entire event will be held virtually. I know what you are thinking, not another Zoom meeting. But while you won't be able to meet face-to-face, the summit organizers have paid close attention to ensure that investors find exactly what they are looking for. For example, there will be industry spotlights focused specifically on the healthcare sector. And there will be more workshops covering a variety of topics. And those topics will include pressing questions for companies ready to expand into the U.S. market, building a client base in a digital world, and that's an interactive workshop, how to build an intellectual property strategy for entering the U.S. market. And that's just to name a few. There will still be a B2B online scheduling and matchmaking application, which will allow you to set up meetings with states, investors, service providers, and whatever you need. Now, each year, the Summit's program covers a variety of need-to-know topics, and this year will be no exception. Just a few examples of the topics that will be addressed during the week-long summit are employment laws, like how you can improve human resources and staffing, navigating the U.S. visa landscape, which I'm sure is very important to anybody investing in the United States, startup funding and financing, tax credit and incentive programs. Using federal and local tax credits and incentive programs can provide a crucial advantage for your business. And this year, the summit has dedicated programming for startup and tech companies. And I noticed earlier that 84% of Korea Bio members are small companies or startups. So this is particularly important for those companies. In fact, just 2 weeks ago, my team hosted a pitching competition at the U.S. Embassy, where 8 Korean startups went head-to-head and pitched their technology to 5 venture capitalists and representatives from accelerator programs from around the world. 4 of the judges were from the U.S., and 1 judge was from the Korea Development Bank. And the winner of our competition will pitch during the regional winners pitch during the summit. But it is not just the winner of our event that can capitalize on the summit. Any startup can take advantage of the focused programming. I believe I have already spoken probably too long, And in closing, I'd like to encourage you to consider the U.S. as a place to invest and to build your business, and please reach out to me or my office if you have any questions. And I'd also like to encourage you all to sign up for this year's summit, and here's the link. And finally, here is our investment promotion team at the U.S. Embassy. Thank you for your time, and I hope everyone stays healthy. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Briscoe, for a very informative and comprehensive presentation, including the information on Select USA service. Because I think we still have some time allocated for you, because I have some common questions after 4 presentations, but also have specific questions for US. So maybe I will ask specific questions for US using this extra time. So in US government support policies for bioindustry might vary by states. In your presentation, you mentioned Korean FDI project in biosector and greenfield FDI in life science in US. Can you actually tell us the states or areas with relative advantages in terms of government support? And maybe can you provide some good examples of with bioclusters, with bioindustries?
Yeah, thank you. And if I had known there were going to be questions, I would have used more of my time. But anyway, we have tools that can help guide companies. We talked about the cluster mapping tool. So if a Korean company is interested is in a particular industry and wants to go and find out, well, where is the best state to invest? And here's the issue for us at the embassy. We're the federal government. We can't point you in we can't say to you, oh, go over there, because we have to be location neutral. But we do have tools that if you ask us a question, we can provide an answer, and that will help you find the locations you might be of most interest. And understand there are 50 different states. So they all have different incentive programs. They all have their strengths. And so we can also help you navigate that process as well. But just understand, if you ask us, where should I invest, we'll have to say, well, we can't tell you exactly where to invest, but we can help you find the information that you need in order to make that decision. And understand there are probably several places that will work out well, but we can help you get the information you need to find the place that matches what your needs are.
Thank you for your answer. Maybe I'll have another question. So in one of your slides, you showed FDI experts and R&D in life science, in pharmaceuticals and medicines. And can you also tell us the main R&D investment areas and scale for the bioindustry with the new Biden government? And do you expect any impact or implications on Korean bioindustry partners that want to export their product to US or invest in US?
Yeah, that's a good question in terms of where R&D is going. You know, we've seen a great example, not only in the United States, but worldwide in the last few years, of the strength that R&D can play in responding to this pandemic. And we saw under the previous administration, under what they called the Warp Speed program, the development of vaccines that are now being deployed. And we did this through 2 administrations and crossed over, and now we're in the deployment stage under a new administration. So that's a good example of the type of R&D effort that can happen in the United States. Where will the future go? I can't specifically point in a certain direction, but I can indicate, I have read and understand that the Biden administration is very interested in drug pricing reform, also rural health care, and then also telehealth. So these areas, if an innovative company comes along and can address needs in those areas or bring costs down, certainly, they're going to find open arms in the United States, and also the type of funding and R&D experience and effort that they might be looking for.
Thank you very much again for the presentation and answers. So let me move to the second speaker from Malaysia. So Mr. Mohammed Radion Zabri. He is the director, Malaysia Investment Development Agency, Authority, sorry. So let me welcome Mr. Zabri. Thank you.
Thank you to the chairman of the seminar, Dr. Yong Mi-ji, for the short introduction. A very good afternoon, distinguished speaker for today, ladies and gentlemen, and also to all our online viewers. First and foremost, please allow me to extend my sincere thanks to Korea Bio for inviting us to be part of today's Bioindustry seminar. Today's seminar is both timely and a good start to enhance the cooperation between the Korea Bio companies and Malaysia, especially during this post-COVID-19 era. Can I have, sorry, thank you. Please allow me to give a brief introduction on my organization. The Malaysian Investment Development Authority, or MIDA, is the first point of contact for any businessman who wants to set up their operation in Malaysia. As the principal investment promotion agency of Malaysia, MIDA has been instrumental in attracting FDI for more than 50 years since its establishment in 1967. MIDA has global footprint with strategic network of 20 overseas offices located in the capital exporting countries, covering United States, Europe, Asia, and Australia, to attract and facilitate foreign investment into Malaysia. In Republic of Korea, we have an office located in Jonggat Station in Seoul. As you can see, MIDA offers a wide range of services. As an investment promotion agency, MIDA also provides end-to-end solutions for investors, including approvals for a manufacturing license for manufacturing activities or production facilities, investment incentive, expatriate post, import duty exemption, and handhold companies towards the implementation of the projects. With dedicated MIDA officer on standby, we are your one-stop agency to ease the setting up of your business in Malaysia. Ladies and gentlemen, over the last 5 decades, MIDA has assumed the critical and pivotal roles in contributing significantly to Malaysia's rapid industrial development, particularly in the manufacturing and services sector, by promoting investment, both foreign investment and domestic investment. MIDA investment strategy have gone through various transformations in line with the changing dynamics of the global and domestic economic landscape. Malaysia has successfully transformed from a country dependent on agricultural and primary commodities to export-driven economy speared by high technology, knowledge-based, and capital-intensive industry towards becoming a high-income nation. A quick fact on Malaysia. Malaysia is strategically located in the heart of Southeast Asia with a total land area of more than 300,000 square kilometers. It has land borders with Thailand in West Malaysia and Indonesia and Brunei in East Malaysia. Malaysia is a multi-ethnic and multi-religious country in Southeast Asia and one of the wealthiest and most developed countries in the region. MIDA continues to encourage high-quality investment in the manufacturing sector, especially in the catalytic subsector, namely chemicals, electrical and electronics, machinery and equipment, aerospace, and medical device. As for the services sector, there are still immense opportunity within the areas of principal hub logistics, healthcare, e-commerce, industrial revolution 4.0, green technology, and renewable energy. And of course, biotechnology industry, also one of the promoted sector in Malaysia. To further balance the regional economic development in Malaysia, the government introduced 5 distinct regional economic growth corridors. As you can see in the northern part of Malaysia, we have Northern Corridor investment authority that focus in developing and promoting more investment in modern agriculture, manufacturing and design, tourism, logistics, education and health. While in the southern part of Malaysia, we have Iskandar Region Development Authority that focus on financial services, petrochemical and maritime, healthcare, manufacturing and services. In East Malaysia, we have two corridors, namely Sabah Economic Development Investment Authority and Regional Corridor Development Authority. The global economic environment in 2020 was very challenging as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic, which had its contagion effects on major economies throughout the world. Despite the challenges, Malaysia recorded a total of more than 40 billions in approved investment through 4,599 projects in the manufacturing, services and primary sector in the year 2020. Against the backdrop of challenging external environment and declining global FDI inflows, Malaysia remains resilient. The manufacturing sector led the way for total investment approved in the year 2020, recorded a total of 22.3 billion investment. And even in the year 2018, Malaysia was ranked number 8 in the world in export of high technology products with high R&D intensity. This will not be possible without the existence of strong engineering supporting industries. This includes precision engineering, tool and die making, molding and assembly, machinery fabrication, as well as electronic manufacturing services. Malaysia is indeed well positioned as an outsourcing destination and global supplier of parts and components for high technology operation. Republic of Korea always Malaysia top 10 major investors for so many years. As of the year 2020, a total of 387 manufacturing projects with participation from Korea were implemented with total investment more than $8 billion. This clearly shows how important Korean investment to Malaysia economy. For the year 2020, Malaysia was Korea's 11th largest trading partner with a total trade value at $18.93 billion. For the period of January to December 2020, a total of 8 manufacturing projects with Korean participation were approved with total investment more than USD 342.3 million and expected employment opportunities for more than 600 people. Ladies and gentlemen, Malaysia over the last 20 years has been focusing on high technology and attracting companies to undertake complex products and activities. Now we are proud to host large Korean companies such as Lotte, Samsung, POSCO, Hanwha, SK Group, and many more. And as well as we also have so many small medium enterprise companies from Korea in Malaysia. Currently, Malaysia hosts over 5,000 manufacturing companies from more than 60 countries. As the first country in Southeast Asia to launch a bioeconomy initiative, Malaysia is providing an effective and conducive platform to build a local bio-based industry. Science to business has been one of the essential criteria being focused by Malaysia in our national biotechnology policy. The policy aims to transform the biotechnology industry into one of the vital economic contributors to the nation. Malaysia is richly endowed with biodiversity and blessed with a wide array of natural resources that are useful for biotechnology research and development. Generally, biotechnology development in Malaysia can be categorized into 3 categories. Healthcare, that covers biomedical products ranging from medical microbiology up to biosimilar. Industrial, from biofuels to bioplastic, and agricultural, biofertilizer up to aquaculture. The Malaysian government recognized biotechnology as one of the key strategic drivers to propel the country's social and economic development in pursuit of the status of a developed nation. For this purpose, the government launched the National Biotechnology Policy in year 2005 to further develop 3 economic sectors, namely agriculture, healthcare, and industrial manufacturing, as well as to support the growth of an enabling ecosystem throughout the scientific, academic, and business communities in the country. Malaysia already has a strong base in the manufacturing sector to foster the development of high-tech ecosystem with equal geographical distribution. As you can see in the slide, it shows where are the major biotech companies located in Malaysia. In the northern part of Malaysia, we have a local company named Carotech who is producing phytonutrients and related products. And we have in the east region, CJ Bio, a Korean company manufacturing bio-industrial products. While in the southern part of Malaysia, we have Glycos Bio from the United States, producing industrial biochemical, and also Biocon from India, producing biopharmaceutical. For the period of 2012 until the year 2020, we approved a total of 33 biotech projects has been approved in Malaysia with a total investment more than $1.5 billion. MIDA is promoting the entire value chains of industry clusters and focusing on quality investment that will accelerate and sustain the nation's economic growth. We seek to fill up the gaps in the industrial ecosystem and have undertaken many initiatives toward this goal. Measures are also being undertaken to exchange productivity and to encourage foreign companies to utilize their experience and expertise to venture to Malaysia, shore for your business growth in mutually beneficial partnerships. The ecosystem of biotechnology industry in Malaysia can be divided into raw materials, major players, supporting infrastructure, and enablers. As Malaysia attracts FDI from all countries, we are non-discriminatory. We have an open, liberal, and transparent investment regime. Foreign investment are allowed to own 100% ownership in most manufacturing sectors, and many services sectors are also open to FDI through progressive liberalization. Korean companies, particularly in the biotechnology areas, are encouraged to invest in the new growth areas within emerging technologies, capital-intensive, high-value-added, knowledge-based, skill-intensive, export-oriented, and automation and R&D. Moving forward post-COVID-19, ladies and gentlemen, Malaysia is open for business. Malaysia announced its short-term economic recovery plan on 5th June 2020 to speed up the recovery of the country's economy. Some of the major investment measures introduced includes 0% tax incentives for the period of 10 to 15 years, and we also guarantee 2-day approval of manufacturing license for non-sensitive industries. To all investors, you are encouraged to make use of the benefits under this incentive and to be on board with us in building the economy together. In addition to the incentives, we also introduced one-stop center for business travelers. The Malaysian government is very pro-business and welcomes the entry of business travelers to carry out business operation amid the pandemic. Short-term business travelers to Malaysia are now can travel to Malaysia and be exempted from the quarantine. But your visit have to be a short-term visit. The maximum is 14 days. And as at to date, we have approved a total of 46 business travelers from Korea who have visited Malaysia under this program. This is the articles from Mail Business Newspaper on 26 April 2021, introducing Malaysia One-Stop Center for Business Travelers. Why Malaysia? Malaysia's GDP growth has been relatively high over the last 7 years, with a low inflation rate of 1.7% in the year 2018. The International Monetary Fund anticipates Malaysia's economy will grow at a rate of 6.5% in the year 2021, a sharp increase from the expected 1.7% contraction in 2020. Malaysia is located in the heart of Southeast Asia, one of the fastest growing economic regions in the world. The region has recorded an average GDP growth of 5.3% per annum over the last 20 years. The Malaysian government continues to be pro-business, prudent and pragmatic in our policy to ensure that Malaysian investment climate remains attractive for businesses, not only to conduct business activities, but also expand and diversify existing operations. Companies are allowed to repatriate all the capital, interest, dividend and profits back to their home country without any restrictions. Furthermore, Malaysia has signed an agreement, investment guarantee agreement with more than 60 countries to promote greater protection for investors and their investment, which is investment flows between countries. Majority of Malaysians are well versed in English, while most are multilingual. Our talents are young and highly trainable. This provides an additional advantage for foreign investors to do business in Malaysia. In 2019, Malaysia was ranked number 22 in the World Talent Ranking. Malaysia is among the most developed and matured manufacturing and related services country in the region. We adopt an ecosystem approach which involves developing every part of the value chain in targeted sector. The strong and comprehensive ecosystem in our industry offer long-term and sustainable growth prospect for companies to remain and grow in Malaysia. Malaysia is always seeking to expand our trade and diversify our economy base, as well as to find new business partners globally. We have already signed and implemented 14 free trade agreements, which include 7 bilateral FTAs with Japan, Pakistan, India, New Zealand, Chile, Australia, and Turkey. On the ASEAN level, Malaysia has 7 regional FTAs through the ASEAN Free Trade Agreement with China, Korea, Japan, Australia, New Zealand, India, and Hong Kong. This creates a potential market size of 3.9 billion. Intra-ASEAN trade is one of the most diverse trading blocs in the world, as these emerging economies participate more actively in regional trade activities. Intra-ASEAN trade is expected to develop further, benefiting all members. Malaysia exported the most to other ASEAN countries in 2016, worth 60.5 billion or 25.7% of total intra-ASEAN export. Malaysia also offers a wide range of competitive tax incentives for manufacturing projects under the Promotion of Investment Act and our Income Tax Act. The main incentives that Malaysia can offer are the pioneer status, investment tax allowance, reinvestment allowance, incentive for high technology industries, and incentive for strategic projects, and incentives for the setting up of international or regional service-based operations. Malaysia's advantages and proven track record as an attractive investment base has also been recognized by various international institutions. As you can see from the slide, we rank number 1 as the world's best country to invest by the CEO magazine, and also number 1 for most attractive emerging market in Asia by Bloomberg. Ladies and gentlemen, there is certainly no shortage of opportunities in Malaysia. Be part of our robust and reliable local supply chain network that will ease the transition of global companies to set up their operation here. Republic of Korea is one of the important trading partners and source of investment for Malaysia. It has had a long presence in the country's manufacturing and services sector. As Malaysia is moving towards strategic diversification to increase competitiveness, particularly in high-value products and high-end services, there is much scope for expansion for Korean companies to leverage. MIDA is your business partner, and we will help you to expand into Malaysia. We are available on all social media platforms. I would like to invite all our online viewers to feel free to follow us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, and our YouTube channel. And also, I would like to invite all our online viewers to also to visit our office located in Standard Chartered Building in Jonggak Station. you are more than welcome to come and visit us to discuss further on your business proposal in Malaysia. With that note, I would like to end my presentation with thank you and Kamsa Hamida. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Muhammad Dabri, for another very informative and comprehensive presentation. In one of your slides, actually, you mentioned business-friendly investment policies, such as equity ownership and repatriation of incomes and employment of expatriates, which sounds quite encouraging. So thank you again for your presentation. I want to move to the next presenter from Israel, so Mr. Yaniv Goldberg. Mr. Goldberg is Counselor, Head of Economic and Trade Office, Embassy of Israel. So please welcome Mr. Goldberg.
Okay, so thank you very much, Dr. G from IPK, and as well as to Korea Bio and the BioPlus exhibition. I want to share with you, by the way, that last year we participated in BioPlus. We brought some dozens of Israeli companies to participate very successfully, and we enjoyed that very much. And we definitely will be participating this year. I would like also to thank the other panelists here at the panel. I'm proud to represent Israel among countries like the United States, China, and Malaysia. And as well as to the online viewers, thank you for joining us today. So, with that in mind, let's start. Israel. So, Israel is a small country, as you know, 9.2 million people, less than the population of Seoul. A small country in the Middle East, quite promising, with more than $10 billion of investment money going into our startup ecosystem in 2020, putting us in a very good place globally. And Israel is also quite innovative, as you might know. We are putting a lot of effort into R&D, and we are leading the world also in that regard. In terms of entrepreneurship, we also have quite a leading place, with more than 1,000 new startups being opened every year in average during the last decade. So all in all, we tend to say proudly that Israel is indeed small, but we tend to disrupt all kinds of global tech paradigms. So Israel, as you might know, is also now doing very well in terms of COVID-19 vaccinations. We reached a 60% immunity level, which puts us in a very nice place, and we hope to see this graph going further also with other countries. Hopefully we will be able to overcome COVID altogether. Israel is indeed innovative, and this is something that was also said by the World Economic Forum report of 2019. It's an innovation hub where innovative companies grow the fastest, and Teva, one of the companies here in my slides, is a small pharmaceutical company from Israel that started its way even before Israel was established back in the beginning of the 20th century, and is now quite a global, multinational company doing quite well. And there are other companies from Israel that became bigger and bigger, and we look forward to more companies like that. Israel is also a leader in AI, artificial intelligence. Indeed, the US is leading, and China as well. But Israel, if you look at the per capita numbers, is actually the true champion of AI, and this is something that was mentioned in previous reports. Now, Israel, as I said, is leading in R&D. Together with Korea, we put a lot of our GDP into R&D, and you can see the numbers here. These are OECD data, OECD numbers. And this is also because Israel has a very strong basic research and academia, as well as government support to startups. We formed a program, a national program, which is called Yozma, back in the 1990s, and we created our VC ecosystem of our own. Nowadays, most of the VC money actually is coming from overseas. More than 90% of the investment is a foreign direct investment into our startup ecosystem. And we definitely, as a government, we promote the exports of high-tech goods and services, and this is exactly my role here in Korea. Well, Israelis and Israeli citizens and companies are considered to be quite good in execution. We like to improvise. We like to be very agile. And I think this is something that comes from our culture, as well as from the Army service, which is definitely a greenhouse for innovation, entrepreneurship, and technology. Now, Israel, there are many statistics here, but one of the most interesting one is that Israel is second only to China in terms of IPOs in the NASDAQ market. And this is only with 9.2 million people. Let's think what we can do with more than that. Moving forward, there are many good changes in the Middle East for good. The Middle East is an area that knew wars for many years, but nowadays, in addition to our peace accords with Jordan and Egypt for many years now, we have other peace accords with the UAE, with Bahrain, with Morocco and Sudan. Israel will have, for the first time, a national pavilion in Dubai 2021, and we are very happy about that. This brings a new wave of prosperity and economic opportunities to the Middle East. Now, Israel is definitely had a good growth rate before COVID-19, but even after COVID-19, well, the 6.5% growth that is expected is indeed an expectation. I think a few weeks ago, the IMF projected 5% growth for Israel, but indeed the numbers are good, and Israel came out of the crisis quite well, the same as for Korea and other countries, and mainly due to our exports of high-tech goods and services. Israel, as I mentioned earlier, per capita is actually leading the world in terms of VC investment into our ecosystem. And this is, again, relatively to our size and population. So you can see some numbers on the screen right now. And the trend of investment money going into our ecosystem is quite positive. You can see the last decade number. 2020 was actually a record year, as I mentioned, more than $10 billion going into our startup ecosystem in various fields. And you can also see some statistics about the component of those kind of companies. Most of them in the past were like seed companies, A-round, but the trend is that more and more companies are in growth stages, and the market as a whole is becoming more matured. Now, many unicorns are coming from Israel, those kind of companies, startup companies that are evaluated of more than $1 billion. Some of the names here on the screen might be well known to you, some are not, but these companies are doing very well globally. Some of them are from digital healthcare, some of them are from the biotech industry, but mostly in IT and cybersecurity. And also many M&A deals as well, doing very well as notable Israeli companies being traded on global markets. And the same goes for the IPO trend. As I mentioned earlier, Israel has a very good position in the NASDAQ market, as well as in European markets and elsewhere. Just recently, we reviewed, or we've been looking into a new kind of trend, which is called SPAC. Many Israeli companies are going for quick IPOs in the NASDAQ markets mostly, and this is something that Israeli companies are leveraging quite well in order to raise money very quickly and efficiently. Now, when you look at digital healthcare and healthcare as a whole, you can see that in Israel there are almost 700, maybe 800 companies utilizing data science, IT in various ways to provide new technologies, new digital healthcare technologies, and they received more than $800 million in investment during 2020, the year of Corona. Doing very well with data science, a very strong data science R&D and utilization in Israel. And when you look into pharma and biotech, it's actually a growing trend as well. When you think about almost 300 companies in Israel that raised almost $500 million during 2020. Now, I brought some examples, and these indeed are just few examples. Novocure is actually a company that reached the news recently when they reached a valuation of more than $21 billion market cap in NASDAQ. They are developing those kind of unique treatments using electric fields to brain tumors. So this is one example of a company that actually came big. Matriself, on the other hand, is a young startup that is developing this kind of unique production of autologous engineered tissue means that you take the patient and you take the tissue from the patient and you use that in order to reproduce implants for the patient himself. A few years ago, they were able to reproduce an entire heart out of a tissue, a human being tissue. This was some kind of an experiment that they did, and they're doing very well in terms of in producing implants for surgeries and for skeleton surgeries and so on. 4Bio is another company that is providing a genomic and machine learning drug discovery-based engine to provide like personalized medicine for treating cancer, as well as Immunobrain Checkpoint, which is a company that is taking another approach, which is in approaching to the nervous system and in trying to develop immunes to treat Alzheimer's disease, Parkinson, and other diseases. And this company is a young startup that is doing very well and is raising now a lot of money towards their next stages of clinical trials. When you think about Israel, I would like to say that Israel is a sweet spot of investment and healthcare solutions. And you can see here some of the trends between 6 or 7 years ago and to these days. You see that the share of Israeli technologies in the global markets of healthcare is actually growing very fast. It also reflects, as I said, in the volume of investment that is going into our ecosystem, and definitely digital healthcare, biotech, and the utilization of data science into all of that, which we call bioconvergence, is definitely one of the strengths of the Israeli ecosystem. This is why I also like to say that any company, any Korean company that is still not looking into the Israeli ecosystem of innovation and entrepreneurship is actually, especially for investors, they're actually missing many, many good opportunities. And the fact is that all those investors and venture capital that you see here on the screen, some of them are Koreans, some of them are, most of them are European and American, some of them are Asians. They are already present in Israel, having their presence in Israel. ObiMed is a very important one, very big one. Others as well, you probably know. We have various Asian VCs in Israel, and I call here to more Korean investors and Korean CVCs of corporate to look into the Israeli market, and we definitely can help you with that very easily. Now, in terms of policies, and I hope to provide you some insights on that, well, there are many CEOs and economic leaders that look into Israel very fondly, and they were quoted, but I want to emphasize, something is not working here. Oh, so I want to focus first on the fact that these companies that you see here on the screen, the multinationals, more than 350, even more than 400, multinationals that are located in Israel, they are not manufacturing. They chose Israel as their center for R&D activity. They thought about Israel as the center, the global center for innovation and to bring new developments. So if you think about Google, Google has an R&D center in Israel, one of the most important ones for Google. They say that. And some of the most advanced technologies by Google were invented in Israel. This goes the same for the other companies that I emphasized here, Merck, Boston Scientific, Pfizer, Johnson & Johnson, all the big names from the pharmaceutical and healthcare industry, they all, as well as Roche, they all have R&D centers in Israel, and for a good reason. Now, one of the reasons is the fact that in terms of their R&D expenditures, they get the most in terms of productivity and R&D from the Israeli engineers, a very well-educated human power in Israel, many engineers, many PhDs, many educated people. And the fact is that the government is also supporting them in terms of tax incentives, all kinds of benefits and government support to all kinds of multinationals that are coming to Israel. Now, Israel also have a very strong network of community clinics, HMOs. We have a track record of EMRs. EMRs are electronic medical records that we hold for 30, 40 years in some kind of a connected network between our clinics. And this is a very good reason why we were also able to execute a very strong and a successful vaccination operation in Israel. Now, this is one of the slides that I want to focus a little bit when you think about policies and when you think about what the government is doing together with academia and private sector. So first of all, we have the Ministry of Economy, where I belong to, and definitely as a commercial attaché, head of economic mission, my job is to promote Israeli exports of technologies, healthcare technologies, and so on. This is a crucial part for a country where there's no domestic market, and we need to take our startups and grow them to be multinationals, or at least to be able to cooperate with multinationals and sell their technologies and ideas. So this is one part. But when you think about the Israeli Innovation Authority, which is an independent authority that is responsible to nurture the startup ecosystem in Israel, we have several offerings for multinational companies, such as something we call Bioconvergence Program, in which we approach multinational pharmaceutical companies and biotech companies, and we tell them a very basic idea. We tell them, in Israel, you can find young startups, you can do your open innovation operation with Israeli companies, but more than that, you can come to Israel, you can open your own innovation lab, okay, based on your connection with Israeli startups that we will support, and more than that, we will provide you operational cost and capital cost in order to operate this kind of innovation lab, and the amounts are not so big annually, but it's enough in order to establish some kind of a presence, and definitely a very strong support by the Israeli government in order to launch this kind of activity. And as you could see earlier, many multinationals already did that without our support, or partially without support, and they did not regret. Now, besides that, there is also some kind of a community-based ecosystem. One of the examples is what we called EarthIL. It's a community of startups, private sector, academia, government, and multinationals that exist in Israel, is being supported by the Ministry of Economy, and the idea is to create like one community that is supporting each other, is looking into regulation, is helping to create events, is helping to reach out to multinationals, and so on. So this is being done by the government. Another initiative is called H400. It's a special community of private sector that was initiated by private investors in order to create some kind of a community around that and to create the leadership of the healthcare industry in Israel for the next decade. So this is a very interesting initiative. Now, on the side, you can see two examples, but there are many others. One of them is Sonar Venture, is a well-known venture capital and accelerator in Israel that is being supported and owned by Philips and Teva. And this venture capital is focusing on digital healthcare and is doing very, very well. And they are also participating here in Korea in various events and working together with us. On the other end, BioHouse is one-of-a-kind accelerator in Jerusalem in Israel that nurtured the biotech industry in Israel and is now also working with Korean government to help Korean startup actually to go global. And we are very proud of that. Now, I talked about the Bioconvergence Program. IIA stands for Israeli Innovation Authority, our partners in Israel. And definitely when you think about the future of healthcare, of medicine, this is the future. And Korean pharmaceutical and biotech companies should definitely consider working with us on establishing some kind of an innovation lab for their needs in Israel. Well, Israel and Korea definitely should make a better healthcare together, and we are working on a free trade agreement together with the Korea. Now, my office, Israel Economic and Trade Office in Korea, is, well, definitely the gateway for any Korean company and investor in order to work with the Israeli market, in order to learn about Israeli technologies. We are arranging events, delegations before Corona, and nowadays we're making everything virtual, and we're trying to make it very effective and creative. But the most important message is to just engage. There's no point to go on a Zoom meeting if you don't do the follow-up, if you don't create meaningful meetings and discussions, and Israelis really like to engage very directly and openly. Now, more than that, my office is doing tech scouting project, means that we are at your service in case you have a certain need, technological need, you want to do open innovation with Israeli companies, and you don't know where to start, and you just have your needs, you should share that with us, and we will provide you all the right names and solutions. So this is what we do, and we invite you to engage with us very directly. free trade agreement between Israel and Korea is just beyond the corner, and I hope that soon enough I will be able to share with you very good news about it. Healthcare definitely goes digital in various aspects. Made in Israel is a digital healthcare event that we just had a week ago, a very big one with 5,000 guests from all around the world. All the commercial attaches, my colleagues, joined in a joint effort, and we brought many, many Korean companies that engaged freely and immediately with Israeli companies. And Mixi Biomed is actually an event around biotech that's going to take place virtually this May, and you're most welcome to make contact with me in order to hear some more details about that. Well, this looks quite far away. This is Israel. In the center, you can see Jerusalem and other beautiful locations from the state of Israel. Israel is definitely waiting for you after COVID-19 will end. I would like to see all of you coming to Israel in a business delegation to meet with Israeli companies, as well as doing a lot of fun along Israeli beach line and in the Israeli desert and in other places. This is our email. We have a Naver blog in Korean. We have a YouTube channel, definitely, as everyone is doing nowadays for a good reason. And I invite all of you to stay in touch. And I would like to say kamsahamnida to all of you listening. And thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Goldberg, for a very inspiring presentation. And I also want to congratulate Israel for great success of vaccination program. And your statement on actually on first slide, Israel is small but disrupts global tech paradigm. Seems to be true. And then I now want to move to the last speaker from China, Mr. Bingshuo Chen. Mr. Chen is third secretary of the Embassy of the People's Republic of China, based in Korea. So, Mr. Chen, please.
Good afternoon. I am in charge of science and technology at the Embassy of the People of China in the ROK. I would like to thank our chairperson, Dr. Ji, and I also want to thank Korea Bio for providing us with this wonderful opportunity and a venue for exchange. Today, I would like to give you a brief introduction to the biopharma industry of China. First, I would like to point out the big interest in biopharma industry all over the world, and China is not different. And you can see that the global biopharma market is continuing to grow, starting from 2013. And the market recorded $284.6 billion in 2019. And bio is taking up 21.62% of the total pharma market. However, this trend and growth is mostly led by the companies in the US and in Europe. And these global companies have many patents and also take up most of the sales. Now, Asia is emerging and growing in this area. However, compared to the US and Europe, I think we have a long way to go. We are rather behind. Also, in the recent years, the CRO market and the CMO markets have grown. The story is similar here. These markets are being led by the US and Europe. However, in the recent few years, I believe that China, Japan, and Korea are recording growths, and the markets in these countries are growing. And I believe that the biopharma industry of China started to grow from 1980. And since then, the growth was rather slow at that time. However, I think we saw big growth since 2015. And in recent years, we are now recording $48.1 billion in terms of market size, and China is recording an annual growth rate of 20%, and this growth is likely to continue in the coming years. However, the Chinese pharmaceutical market is, of course, focused on chemical drugs. This takes up 43.7%, and Biopharma is only 11.7%. And as for our major Biopharma products, they are gene process drugs and active protein, Chinese medicine, vaccines, and target treatment and antibodies. There are three development factors behind the development of the biopharmaceutical industry in China. First is the policy-related factors. The Chinese government has designated the biopharma market as one of its strategic industries. And in 2016, the 13th five-year development plan was introduced, and at that time there was strengthened policy support for new drug development, copy drugs, vaccines, medical devices, and medical services. And so there are many policy supports from the central government and also from the provinces. The second development factor would be economic factors. There is continued investment in terms of the sanitation area, and there is more income of the Chinese people. And as of 2019, per capita GDP is now over $10,000. And as of 2019, we have 600 million people in the middle class. So there is more disposable income of these people, and more Chinese people are interested in their health, and they are requiring better products and services. And the third development factor has to do with society. And China is already an aged nation. And as of 2019, we had 176.03 million people over the age of 65. And China is continuing to age faster and faster. And of course, our senior citizens will have more severe diseases, and also cancer, and also chronic diseases. So that is why the Chinese people have more heightened expectations for biopharma products and services. Now, next I would like to talk about our response against COVID-19. Now, as for vaccines, we have worked on developing COVID-19 vaccines, and we decided upon 5 technology lines. And under these 5 technological lines, we are carrying out R&D for 14 cases. And for 10 cases, we began phase 3 clinical trials, and we have approved 4 vaccines. And for those who are over the age of 18 and under 60, we have already begun the vaccination. And we are exporting many of our vaccine products. We have worked on COVID-19 diagnostic kits as well. And when COVID-19 emerged in China, last year, we worked very fast in order to develop the diagnostic kits, and we are currently using these kits in Korea and also in China, and also exporting these products. Also, Chinese medicine is proving to be very effective against COVID-19, and that is why using Chinese medicine has been added to COVID-19 treatment measures. Next, I would like to talk about the industry structure of biopharma in China. So we have these biopharma clusters, mainly in the eastern area and the southern area of China. And they have high production capacity. I would like to briefly introduce these areas. So 3 major areas. First is Hanbo Hai, which includes Beijing, Tianjin, and Shandong area, and also Hebei. And you can see that in Beijing, we have many innovative human talent and abundant clinical resources. As for Tianjin, this area is very advanced in modernizing Chinese medicine. And as for Shandong area and Hebei, these areas were the pivotal areas for manufacturing biopharma products and also traditional medicine. The next area is Changxiang Delta area, and this includes Shanghai, Jiangsu, and Zhejiang. And as for Shanghai, the investment environment is very good, and this area is known to be very innovative. And also, there are many outsourcing service organizations in the Shanghai area. As for Jiangsu and Zhejiang, these areas are showing development in terms of biopharma industry and products. And many production bases are being built in these areas. And many R&D projects are currently ongoing in these 2 areas. And the third cluster area is Zhujiang, which includes Guangzhou and Shenzhen. And nearby, we have Hong Kong and Macau, and a lot of the important resources from these areas are being pulled into the Zhujiang Delta area. And so R&D and utilizing the technology and outsourcing are important in these areas. And so I talked about the 3 major biopharma industry clusters. There are other cities that are focusing on biopharma industry. And so in these 3 clusters, well, they have installed many development zones and many biopharma industry parks. And so we already have installed 67 of these biopharma industry parks. And we will be building more of them in the future. And the total production volume is continuing to grow. And we did an evaluation to look at the overall competitiveness of these biopharma industrial parks. And we took into consideration the production capacity and the R&D capacity. And here I list the 5 areas that have the most competitiveness. And as for new drug R&D, we have started clinical phase for 1,287, and the time period is from 2014 to September of 2020. And if you look at the 64 bio new drugs CFDA approval and registration, they focus on 3 areas: recombinant protein products, vaccines, and antibodies. There are about 3,000 bio-related firms in China, and the number is on the increase. And here on this slide, you can see the companies that are making the most investments. So here I have the top 3, Fosun Pharma and Hungary and Innovent, and they are investing heavily in R&D. Next, I would like to talk about future direction, development direction for China. The Chinese government has introduced a blueprint for future growth. And so here we have the vision, and we want to alleviate poverty until 2020 and to create a Xiaoqing society, which roughly translates to well-off society or moderately prosperous society. And from 2020 to 2035, the goal is to realize socialism modernization. And so we have already begun to work on achieving this goal. And the third part of this vision is from 2035 to the middle of the 21st century and this is to build up the wealth of the nation and to realize democracy. And in March of this year, China has announced the 14th five-year development plan. And regarding the biopharma industry, there are 3 major parts to this plan. And according to this plan, the large companies will be working along with the SMEs. And the second part of this program is to utilize IT technology, including AI and big data, and to merge that and use that in order to advance biotechnology. And the third part has to do with more advanced R&D and to promote bio-advanced and promising technology. So there are 3 goals, and by achieving these 3 goals, China aims for a nation in which all the people are healthy and also wealthy. And in recent years, the state governments and the provincial governments have come up with numerous plans to advance the development, and I have a summary of these different policies. And the content of these different plans are quite similar. The focus mainly is on supporting R&D, and the second part has to do with supporting industrialization. Also, there are many plans in place in order to develop innovative new drugs. And I think you can refer to the slides for the specific details. And if you are interested in a specific plan, you can look up the specific plan for the details. This is my last slide, and this is a proposition for cooperation with China. Now, we are still experiencing hardship because of COVID-19. And I believe that the global environment is continuing to deteriorate. And so we will have to fight against new viruses again in the future. And that is why it is important to engage in joint cooperation among nations. And so we are already cooperating. China and Korea, we are already cooperating on many fronts. And I think that we are carrying out joint cooperation and research on many more topics and projects. And I believe that in the future, we will have more opportunities for cooperation between China and Korea. So there are three propositions here. The first one has to do with joint research projects among the industry, academia, and research institutes of the two nations. And there are projects that are selected on an annual basis, and there is joint research being carried out by the two countries. And so each year we select two joint research projects from the Industry Academia Research Institute, and 6 projects that has to do with science technology, and 5 that has to do with industrial technology. And next has to do with investment cooperation. And last year, China announced plans to deal with the post-COVID-19 era. And China established plans focusing on what is called a dual circulation. And this is to focus on the domestic market activation and also to focus on high value add technology, to develop such high value add technology, and also to work more on opening up to other countries. And to open up its economy. And we are also working on investing more investment from the outside. And all the provinces are working on attracting investment and also human resources. And the third part of the slide has to do with regional cooperation. And last year, the RECP was already signed last year, which is the Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership. It is a very comprehensive program, and also we need to cooperate under the Korea-China-Japanese FTA and the Korea-China FTA. And so that was my presentation. And we have a separate division that works on commerce under the Embassy of the People of China in the ROK. So if you have any specific questions, please contact us. Thank you. Yes, thank you very much for that very detailed presentation. Before I begin with the common questions for everyone, there is something I would like to ask you. I am personally interested in Chinese medicine. And I did hear from some other sources that Chinese medicine was very important in dealing with COVID-19. However, I was not able to come across any scientific literature about the effectiveness of Chinese medicine against COVID-19. So maybe you can give me some resources on that.
Now, I'd like to ask 3 common questions if time allows. So first question to all of you is, are there any changes in government policy to support bioindustry in your own country, especially including the licensing by national regulatory authorities? So maybe starting with Mr. Briscoe. Thank you.
Yeah. So most of our central government registration, if not all, is happening through the FDA. And I'd like to point out that the FDA regulates like vaccines, biologics, drugs, medical devices, but also food and cosmetics and animal and veterinary products. So they have a wide range of oversight. It was interesting, before this pandemic, I never understood the term emergency use authorization. And I'd never heard it before, but suddenly we became very familiar with it at the embassy when early on in the pandemic, as it spread in the United States, it became very apparent that there was a shortage of PPE. And Korea stepped forward in a big way to help provide PPE to the United States at its time of need. And it was central government, but it was also organizations, local governments, churches, veterans groups, all types of organizations were coming forward with offering of PPE to be sent. And we acted as a clearinghouse to try to facilitate the shipment of those products to the United States. And the reason I raised the issue of FDA at the time was that all those products had to have what we called emergency use authorization through the FDA. And so we became very well schooled on the process of how that was going to work. And we saw that also unfold as new vaccines and therapeutics came online in the United States, and the FDA dealt with that. Certainly, there became very experienced at it, and then also continue to adapt and expedite clinical trials and operations. So I think the pandemic is a good catalyst for change and expediting the process to bring products to the market more quickly. So that process is ongoing, and if you have questions about it, I strongly encourage those people to go to the FDA website, www.fda.gov, and they can assist and find information there.
So same question to Mr. Mohamed Zabri.
Okay, thank you. When it comes to policy, before and after pandemic for Malaysia, no changes in policy. The business always as usual. And in fact, we introduce more attractive incentives for investors who would like to invest, especially in the biotech industry in Malaysia. We offer up to 15 years of tax-free should any Korean companies decided to relocate their projects from Korea to Malaysia or expand in Malaysia. We can offer you 0% of tax for 15 years, up to 15 years. And also we guarantee a 2 days approval of the manufacturing license. Unlike other promotional investment agency, MIDA, we have the authority to approve. We are the one who evaluates and also approve projects for manufacturing and selected services sector. So what I can say is, in Malaysia, business is as usual. All Korean investors are welcome to invest in Malaysia. Thank you.
Thank you. Same question to Mr. Goldberg.
Well, thanks. I'm happy that you're asking me on registration, because definitely Israel is not a place where multinationals are coming to register drugs. But first of all, adding to Mr. Bisco comments on Korea's support, definitely when the COVID-19 started in Israel, Korea was a great help to the state of Israel. Many shipments of swabs the tool that you're doing the PCR test. So swabs were sent from Korea to Israel as well as other equipment, and we appreciate that very much. In terms of government policy, so in Israel there is a government decision from 2017 to push forward the digital healthcare industry, which is very much related also to biotech and pharmaceutical companies, in a way that we dedicated a budget of $300 million for the next couple of years until 2022 to support all kinds of initiatives that are very much relevant to multinational companies that are looking into the entire process of producing and registering a drug. When you think about the current times of COVID-19 and for the need for example, as emergency treatment such as a COVID-19 vaccination, definitely innovation should be a crucial part of any drug development process in the future. And therefore, I believe that the kind of incentive that the Israeli government is providing in terms of the kind of bioconvergence program that I was mentioning earlier, opening an innovation lab in Israel, is one of the ways. But in addition to that, you should know that in Israel there are several government programs specifically on AI. There is a national program around that, and for a good reason we are in a good place globally on that, but also in terms of quantum computing. Now, quantum computing is one of the technologies that is going to disrupt also the pharmaceutical industry in the way that a pharmaceutical drugs development will be much more efficient, much faster than ever before. Israeli companies are also leading that area as well. So again, we are not a place to register any drugs, but we are definitely a place to innovate drugs and biotech as a whole. Thank you.
Thank you. Same question to Mr. Chan.
Yes, actually, if you think about China, well, COVID-19 started in China, and since then, the central government has carried out many government-level R&D products, so developing vaccines and also diagnostics. And later on, since then, not many changes have been made to our policies. Now, as for overseas technology, rather than bringing them in, China wants to develop our own technology. And that is why we are working on developing new drugs and medical devices. And that is why we are investing heavily on R&D in these areas. And as for the approval system for the new drugs, we have made many improvements in order to reduce the cost of giving approval and to shorten the time frame. And so we are approving new drugs faster. And as for the medical insurance, we are covering more and more drugs under our medical insurance coverage. And so that is reducing the burden of the Chinese people. And we are able to guarantee more profits for pharmaceutical companies as well. And so we are focusing on technology. Technology is first, and then we are focusing on cooperating with other parties in the world in order to speed up our industrialization so that we can further enhance the level of industry in Korea and also to improve the quality of our products. Thank you.
Thank you. So my second question is more practical question. So it's quite obvious we need to have more CMO, contract manufacturing capacity, and CDMO capacity to really meet the global need for the vaccines or therapeutics. So maybe can you tell us more about your CMO capacity or perspective and government support in your own country, if any? Starting from Mr. Briscoe.
Yeah, so Our understanding is that CMO, U.S. pharmaceutical CMO market is expected to reach a compound annual growth rate of about 5% from 2021 to 2026. So it is growing, and they provide a number of services across the board. Pharma has noted that companies are increasingly outsourcing some of these needs, particularly in manufacturing, to CMOs. So that is happening. I'm not an expert in this area, but U.S. is always looking for new innovations that include any type of innovation in the bioindustry sector. So there is growth in this area in the United States and potential, and increasingly companies in the United States are looking to outsource some of those of their what they need to do, particularly in manufacturing. So I think there is potential there. That's my judgment.
Thank you. Mr. Mohamed Zabri? Oh, yeah. So, yeah, Mr. Goldberg.
Yeah, so can you hear me? So I think that as the same question, I'm not sure that in Israel there are too many CMOs or CDMOs, but I think that I'm aware to the fact that several Korean companies are looking into Israeli market in terms of distribution, and they're looking at the Israeli market as a place to distribute very innovative drugs, and there are several Israeli companies that are helping them in that. But I want to shed a light on an area of technology that is actually not being discussed too much here in Korea, but I think might be relevant, depends on regulation in the upcoming years, and it's cannabinoids or medical cannabis, which is an area of biotech that Israel is quite excelling at. There are many Israeli companies that are developing and producing medical cannabis for various usages. Israeli government is now formulating a policy on exports of medical cannabis, and we are working very strongly. There are several Israeli companies that are already working with European governments mostly on manufacturing and distribution of medical cannabis, mainly for cancer treatment, treating of pain, and so on. So I think this is an area of, as well as development and manufacturing, that Israeli companies are quite good at, and I invite Korean investors and companies to work with us on that. Thank you.
Mr. Chen, 사실 그 발표
I think CMO was mentioned during your presentation. Would you like to add anything? Now, as for the CMO market in China, I think we started a bit late, so we're a latecomer. However, the market has been growing in the recent years. So the CMO market in 2011 in China was $1.8 billion US, but as of last year, it was already recording $8.5 billion US. So we have 30 plus CMO firms in China. And in the three major bioindustry clusters, we have these CMOs located there mainly. And if we are successful in developing new technology, then the central government will be investing more on these CMOs. And if these CMOs get approval from the US FDA or other regulatory authorities from other regions, then the Chinese government will be more supportive.
It is true that current R&D investment is focused on COVID-19 globally, but can you tell us probably what would be the focus areas in bioindustry in your country? Starting from Mr. Briscoe.
Yeah, I referenced some of the Biden administration, what we see as some of their priorities moving forward, certainly in terms of telehealth and distribution of health care services. And so that can be part of it. Also, FDA is engaged in a number of efforts and coordinating, say, with the institutes and centers of health to gather clinical data on potential new uses for existing drugs. They're also facilitating information sharing regarding the use of 3D printing and other advanced manufacturing technologies for PPE and other medical device parts. Also, collaborating with partners across the government, agencies and academia to promote analysis of real-world data to inform our pandemic response. That's just a few examples that the FDA is working on.
Thank you. Same question to Mr. Mohamed Sabri.
I think as I highlighted earlier in my presentation, the Malaysian government recognized biotechnology as as one of the key strategic drivers to propel the country's social and economic development in pursuit of the status of a developed nation. Science to business has been one of the essential criteria being focused by Malaysia in our biotechnology policy. And among the focus area targeted by the Malaysian government, we want more company in the bioagricultural, bioindustrial, biomedical. To be specific, for bioagricultural, we are looking for extraction, standardization, product development and validation, including preclinical studies for nutraceuticals, cosmeceutical food ingredients, functional foods, pharmaceutical and dietary supplements. And while for bioindustrial, we are focusing more into the industrial bioinputs, bio-based chemical, biocatalysts, and bio-based materials. As well as for biomedical, we want more investment in the biopharmaceuticals, cellular and genetic therapy products, and also molecular screening and diagnostic. Thank you.
Thank you. Same question to Mr. Kolba.
Yes, thank you. So I don't want to repeat myself. I definitely mentioned already the bioconvergence concept and medical cannabis that is also is coming from various countries as well. I think that IT has a major part, as a major role in the way we look at the digital healthcare industry, medical device industry, as well as the biotech industry, the way we can utilize IT and advanced computing in order to take forward these industries altogether, as well as the way we bring new technologies much faster, in a much more efficient way to the market, to the consumers, making things much faster and doing more with less even. So this is one comment that I wanted to add. Another comment that I wanted to add is that I think it's quite obvious at this point that telemedicine or remote healthcare is going to be quite crucial in the upcoming years, definitely when we look at the past year. And at this point, I would like to also deliver a message to the Korean ecosystem or Korean market here, if I may. I think that the way telemedicine or remote healthcare is going forward here in the Korean market is something that we would like to see going faster a little bit. I think that it's not counter-effective for the Korean market to go faster towards more remote medicine solutions. It actually will bring more opportunities both to doctors, to Korean startups, to the entire industry as a whole. And definitely there are many opportunities to work together around that. And I invite Korean regulators as well as companies to work on that also with us, with Israel. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Chen?
Yes. Now, we have to look at the market demand in China. So we have recombinant proteins and antibodies that are in demand. And also there is a demand for vaccines as well. So in these three areas, many Chinese firms are investing heavily. And we have seen some results in curing some vascular diseases and diabetes, and also hypertension. And I look forward to cooperation between Korean and Chinese firms in these areas.
Because we still have about 10-12 minutes, maybe I'll ask another question very briefly. So last question. If there is R&D collaboration with the local industries in your own country, would it be possible for your government to provide joint investment to local industries? Starting from Mr. Briscoe.
I'm sorry, the question again is? It's okay.
If there is R&D collaboration with local industries in your own country, can your government provide joint investment to those local industries?
Well, I don't think I can answer that in specifics, but again, as I've noted earlier, if governments, and certainly local governments, want to incentivize investment into their jurisdictions. And so there are all types of different measures, different incentive programs, different investment programs that they may offer. There are 50 different state governments, and then below that you have other localities, county governments and city governments that might also offer incentives. My brain is simply not big enough to be able to encapsulate all of those different programs. That said, we do have programs through my team at the Embassy that can help locate those, can help provide information on what those might be, and in particular in the bioscience area. Another thing that I would like to push again is our virtual investment summit. Certainly there will be programs and panels that deal with these types of questions and can provide answers on this as well as being able to access and network with the different people and the different the service providers, the local government officials, and even FDA officials who might be able to provide insights on that as well.
Thank you. And same question to Mr. Mohammad Zabri.
Okay, to answer your question, I can say yes, the government do, in certain cases, the government do investing directly in a company, in a good potential and prospect company, but I have to say this is a case-by-case basis. The government may invest in the company through their incorporated company. And however, the government through MIDA, we can assist the company in terms of indirect assistance. For example, we can offer matching grant for the R&D, meaning to say every dollar that the company spends for their R&D, the government will match another dollar. For example, if the company invested 10 million for the R&D, we will match 5 million for the total cost of the R&D. So to answer your question, yes, we do have this kind of facility, but it's all case-by-case basis. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Goldberg?
Yes, actually, the best questions are the ones that I have a direct answer on them. So in this specific case, I want to mention that Israel has several joint R&D funds with other countries. It's with the US, with the EU, with Singapore, India, and Korea. So with Korea, we have a joint R&D fund, which is called Korea R&D, Korea-Israel R&D Fund. Definitely biotech and pharmaceutical bioconvergence projects are well entitled to be participating in that. there are many Korean companies that open joint ventures with Israeli universities or Israeli companies, might be in Korea, might be in Israel, but definitely Korean companies can apply for getting a grant from the government of Israel and Korea together. We are about to leverage and increase the fund in the upcoming future. So definitely we have a joint R&D fund for that, and I invite Korean companies to work with us on that as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chen.
Yes, as I said earlier, we have the central government, we have the provincial governments, and I covered our policies during my talk. And if there is a researcher, if there's an institute with advanced technology, and if the said person or institute wants to come to a specific region and establish a presence there, then we are ready to make investments. And regarding the R&D process and the clinical phases and the commercialization phases, we have support schemes for all these different steps and phases. And if overseas institutes want to come to China and establish a innovation center in a regional city in China, yes, you are eligible for support.
I think we can wrap up to today's event now. So I want to thank the all representatives from 4 countries and also online participants for joining today's great event. And I hope today's discussions will be helpful for Korean bioindustries to understand and create investment opportunities in bioindustry areas for all 4 countries. And with that, I want to close the 5th Bioindustry Seminar. Thank you so much.